Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get into the session. This is a broadcast, so unfortunately I'm unable to hear any of your audio. I will show you shortly where you can ask some questions throughout the webinar. And I'll save a bit of time towards the end to answer any questions that you do have. Any that I'm unable to answer, I'll certainly go away, find the answer, and come back to you. Hopefully you can see my screen now. It should be a PowerPoint with top tips to reduce business costs. In terms of timing, this should be around half an hour, saving a bit of time at the end for some Q&A. So in terms of the webinar, we put this webinar together to try and help businesses, because we know it's a bit of a difficult time. All businesses throughout the year are looking to reduce costs, but especially at these unprecedented times, there's more focus on businesses to reduce costs. Business owners, FDs, how can they review the cash going out or cash coming in? What can they do to improve that cash flow as a business? So we've put together some 5 top tips on what businesses can do, and there's elements in there where we can support you in doing those and helping you along the way in terms of the products and services that we offer. Well, hopefully you'll find some other tips that it may be that MorePay can help. Maybe it's just you find alternative ways to save costs in your business throughout this session today. So this is on the back of a guide. We have produced a guide as well. So there's a physical PDF download that you can get off our website. So hopefully this webinar brings that guide to life as such. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. In terms of agenda then, because we have got a lot of prospects on here, as well as we have got some customers on the webinar today. So I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes just going through just very top level who MorePay are. And then we'll get into the 5 top tips, as I mentioned, to help businesses reduce costs. And then towards the end, we'll save some time for some Q&A. So I mentioned earlier that there is a question box on the GoToWebinar panel. On my side, it's on the right-hand side of the window, but there is a question box. So throughout the webinar, if you've got any questions, put a question in there. Hopefully I'll get to answer it at the end. This is how I will see the question. I'm not going to mention who's asked the question. I'll keep that confidential. I'm just going to ask the question and read out a question. But what it does do is if we don't get around to answering all, or there's something I'm unable to answer, I can certainly get back to you and I know who's asked the question. So just a top level overview of who MorePay are for those that are unfamiliar with our brand. So we're a leader in the SMB space for payroll and HR solutions. So we have a cloud-based payroll and HR system that sits at the core of what we do. And then we wrap services around that. So whether it be payroll, whether it be auto-enrollment, whether it be health and safety, HR, employment law, we wrap services around that and support businesses in outsourcing payroll, HR, health and safety. So to give a good example of that is we have a payroll, if we take a payroll as an example, we have a payroll software, really robust piece of software that businesses could use just the software on its own and use that to pay their staff. They do all the calculations, keep it in-house. They're just using the MorePay software. Or you can start to outsource elements of the payroll, and we'll get into what that may look like later on in the session. But it may be that businesses they don't want to run the risk of having a single point of failure within their business. It may be that they haven't got the expertise in their business and they want to outsource it. That's where we come in. You can outsource it. You're still using the same system. You can flex it up or down depending on your requirements as a business. And we're there to help you. And we've got experts in the UK that can support you with elements of your payroll. So it's not just payroll to HR. We have an advice line for both health and safety and employment law. We have consultants. We have trainers that can come out support you. Well, at the moment we're doing it remote, but they're there, they're fully qualified experts that can come out and support you as a business on a range of topics and issues you may be experiencing. Morepay have been going, I think this year will be the 54th birthday for Morepay. We've got around 10,000 customers, and you'll see some of the logos at the bottom. You'll see there's some big brands in there. That's not to say that we do their whole payroll or HR, whichever service they may have. It may be that we do franchises, but you'll see that there are some key and big brands, but there are also some smaller businesses in there that we look after from a payroll and HR side. Each month we produce around 500,000 pay slips, handle around 12,500 payroll and HR queries each month. So those queries may be, as I mentioned before, if we take, for example, this time the employment law advice, businesses will pick up the phone, speak to our advisors on a range of topics. It could be, I've got someone who's persistently off work. How do I manage that? And we would engage and support that, and you can ensure that advice as well. So that's just one type of engagement that we have when I mentioned the payroll and HR queries. And then together with our parent company, Zealous, we pick 1 in 6 of the UK working population. So hopefully that gives you a flavour for Morepay, gives a bit of credibility around us as a business as well. In terms of what we promise, what we set out to do is make payroll and HR easy. There's a lot of legislation that changes. Obviously, in the payroll arena, we've seen a lot change recently with the job retention scheme and the statutory sick pay moving to day one for COVID-19. But also in the HR side and health and safety side, there is a lot of legislation. Our aim is to make that as easy for SMB businesses to understand and implement. And we do that by providing a simple onboarding. So whichever service you're coming on board with Morepay for, we make sure that is a stress-free. We have UK implementers that will support you to get you up and running, to get that switch as seamless and as easy as possible. We know that switching, for example, payroll can be a bit daunting. We're there to just make that change and that switch as easy as possible. Then we produce easy to use software. So everything that we do around our software is designed around how easy can we make it for users, and that's not just users in terms of admins, that's also employees as well. So we'll mention a bit later on, but we've got an app coming so that employees can log in, do pay slips. Eventually they'll be able to do holiday requests all on a mobile app on the phone. So again, just making it as seamless and as easy to use as possible. Then again, hopefully through this webinar, I'll show you some of the functionality that we do have that kind of puts us up there in terms of one of the best payroll engines and HR engines on the market. You'll see some of the automation that I'll talk about later on. So we pack all our software with that rich functionality to help businesses. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got those flexible services. So not only do we just give you the software, we can support SMB businesses in ensuring compliance and also ensuring that they're doing the right by their employees. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of Morepay and who we are. So getting into the 5 top tips, the first one that we've got is improving cash flow. So businesses, one of the main challenges at the moment is how do they get cash into the business, and how do they limit the amount of cash going out of their business. So one way in which Morepay can support businesses with that is through faster payments. So this is a new, when I say new, we've had it around a year product. I think we're the only payroll provider that offers faster payments. So typically, you would use a BACS payment. So once you've done your calculations for your payroll, you would then pay your employees via a BACS payment. So that would typically take 3 days or up to 3 days. So if your payday is on Friday, you would normally be sending your BACS or submitting your BACS on the Wednesday. At that point, that large sum, and typically for a business is one of the biggest outgoings that they'll have, is then ring fenced, and that money is then set aside for the wages that gets paid on the Friday, for my example. What we can offer with faster payments is to reduce that so that the money comes out either minutes, hours, or the day before you actually pay. So it all depends on how we set that up and what controls we put in place and agree with you. But you can have it so that the payment is still sat in, or your cash is still sat in your business right up until you actually have to pay your employees. So you cut in 2 days off that cycle in effect. And it means that you've got more time to either get cash into the business, or you've got more time to play with. And anybody that's running a business from a financial point of view will, 2 days extra with that amount of cash, salary cash, is invaluable, and it will be very beneficial. So a couple of the benefits of using faster payments is, obviously, you've got your improved cash flow, you've got cash into your business for up to 2 extra days. Avoid risks, so you don't have to, if you're waiting on a supplier or a customer to pay you. It may be that if you're using backs, you haven't got, you're gonna have to go into your overdraft or take interest. However you finance your business, or whatever arrangements you've got with your bank, you may have to loan cash in order to fund that and to ensure that backs payment does get through. Now, obviously, if you've got faster payments, those couple of days might mean that actually you don't have to do that. You don't have to go into any short-term loans or any payments that the bank may enforce on you because you haven't got the cash in there. So you're avoiding that risk. And then also, if you do need to make an emergency payment for whatever reason it may be, that you're running late on your payroll, you haven't got the money in your account and you need just a day or so, and then ultimately you've missed your back's cut off. You can then get into to the point where you are starting to pay for CHAPS payments, and those do get costly from the banks. And anybody that's made a CHAPS payment will know that it's a considerable amount of money. Again, using faster payments will hopefully avoid that risk. You can also look to reduce costs, because a lot of businesses that are using BACS payments, their bank does charge them for BACS payments, so it'll be hidden, or sometimes it's hidden inside their annual charge from the bank. So if you go to your bank and find out what that charge is, and then you work out how much it is to move to faster payments, you'll probably find, and you'll be surprised, that in effect you could actually save money by moving to faster payments. It's just worth looking at and investigating. Because not only could you reduce your costs, but also improve that cash flow. And then also for your payroll teams, whether it be yourself that's looking after payroll, or whether it's you've got teams that work under you that are looking after your payroll, it gives them an extra 2-3 days. So it's, again, depending on the arrangement we have, it's 2 to 3 days extra whereby you can process your payroll. So if you're paying on a Friday, typically your turnaround time is shortened by 2 to 3 days. So you've got more time to get that information in, make sure that the data's right before you have to lock down and say to Morepay, yeah, I'm happy, let's pay. And that's if you're on a managed service. Obviously, if you're on the software, it does give whoever's controlling that payroll those extra days just to ensure that any last minute changes to the payroll can happen. So you could actually make a change the day before payroll if you've got fast payments, and then obviously pay your employees the following day. So hopefully that's given you an insight into how you could look to improve cash flow within your business. And then another one of the tips that we've got in our guide is about being proactive with incoming cash flow. So cash coming into your business is, if you've got invoices out, just the best practice would be, pick up the phone, make sure they've got their invoice, make sure that they're on schedule in terms of their payment, they're ready, they've got it set so that you are, the more you can forecast that money coming in, just helps businesses with their cash flow. So another tip that we've got is using better technology. So there are a lot of off-the-shelf payroll packages out there that, in effect, a lot of the calculations you'll do manually. So if I take, for example, occupational sick pay, so if someone, you've got an occupational sick pay scheme, someone's off sick, our system will calculate how much to pay, depending again on how we set it. That's all. It all comes in the configuration when we set it up, so that you don't have to go away and calculate that yourself. Statutory sick pay, maternity pay, adoption pay, average holiday pay, all of those calculations. A lot of systems you will have to do them yourself. Ours, once you've got it set up, they will, as soon as you put someone or you set the parameters for their maternity, it will calculate what maternity pay they should be getting, and it will pay them. Same with sickness, so statutory or occupational. Same with average holiday pay, holiday accruals. It's all automated. So there's a lot of people that don't realise that there are systems out there that can automate that. So it is worth, if you're doing a lot of manual calculations yourselves throughout the month or week, if you do a weekly payroll, whatever frequency it may be, have a think and go out in the market and see if there are a better way of doing it and a different or more feature-rich product that can actually support you and make all that those calculations automatic, and you don't have to do it, freeing you up a lot of time. Also, analytics. There's a lot of businesses that will go away. They'll pull off reports and they'll start trying to manipulate them in Excel, and they'll typically have to do that every month, and it may be that you can't save the report or you have to do a different parameter. What you can do is, and one product that we do have, and it comes embedded with our payroll, is analytics. So this sits above your payroll and your HR, and it gives you real-time information about what's happening in your business. Your absence costs, your why people are leaving. It may be your gender pay gap reporting, should you need to report on it, but it will provide all that necessary information. So a lot of the stuff you may do on a monthly basis, where you're going away and creating these reports, the product will actually do it itself. And then another one is product updates. If you are looking at reviewing, make sure that whoever you're looking at, see what product updates they do. Especially with the job retention scheme, there's a lot of payroll providers out there that there was a bit of a range between some did the full update to allow you to process furloughed employees, and they did it in a quick timescale. And there's some that are still working on it, and some that say actually you have to pay for it. So it's just worth checking that and checking what their updates are, how often they do it, what type of product development cycle they use, just to ensure that you're getting, as and when legislation does change, and to cover yourself in one of the scenarios that we're in, this one of these emergency legislation, that you've got a product that can support you with that. The next bit is around integrated systems. So there's a lot of businesses out there that will use a payroll, HR, a T&A, an employee benefits package, but they don't actually all connect, and they don't all speak to the same database. Now, that could cause you, and we'll come on to it in a minute, some duplicate data entry. But also, you're not getting the most from your investments. So you're paying for all these, but you're not getting the most. If you have that where they're all connected, so if you're going out again looking in the market and you're looking for a payroll system or any other system, look to see whether they do have any connectors or APIs that mean you can connect your systems together. Because once you do, it'll make that process so much easier. So, for example, if your payroll and your HR are connected, as you go to add a new starter in your HR system, that new starter automatically gets fed into the payroll. Obviously saves you a lot of time in terms of duplicate entry, and obviously just that seamless data flow just makes your investments that you've plowed into these new systems, it just makes them more added value to you. And then also about paperless, there are still a high number of businesses that print pay slips, print reports. You can switch these and obviously go green, especially as the current climate, people working from home, having them on a mobile device or on a self-serve application is going to be much more cost effective, and also better for the environment and a better employee experience if they're all digital. And I think when you get into to some of the payroll providers, when you get into the pay slips, the employees can start looking at graphs and start analysing their pay as well, which obviously delivers a much better employee experience for your staff. So the third point and tip that we've got is about reducing admin costs. So top one on here is automate your processes. So I mentioned before around integrating payroll, HR. One thing that you can do with again, if you've got your systems connected, is if an employee puts in a holiday request, you can have it set up so the workflow goes to a manager, the manager approves it, and then it gets fed into whatever system it may be, and it gets recorded for as a holiday. So once you've created the workflow, there's not just that, you can do performance reviews. It just frees up a lot of your time to work on other elements of the business, and you're not having to manually send performance reviews out. You can automate those. You're not manually having to go in and approve holidays. You can have them automated so that as someone puts in the request, it automatically notifies someone. The next bit is around outsourcing elements of your payroll. So you may still have payroll expertise in your business, but is it an option where you can reduce some of the admin and outsource some of that to a payroll provider, and to free you up more time to work on other elements of the business again? And it may be that you actually don't need as much staff. So some businesses that have 2 or 3 payroll admins, maybe you could reduce those and outsource it, and it may be much more cost effective. And then another one to reduce admin costs in your business is to push some of the tasks to their employees if you can. So depending on your business and how you operate, you can push, like, for example, timesheets, holiday submissions, data amendments. So I know that in the MorePay system, an employee can log in, they can amend their bank details if they need to, they can amend their address details, contact information. A lot of businesses, again, due to the current situation, have had to do a bit of an audit and ask employees to go in and update their contact information because they're going to be working from home, so they haven't got that day-to-day contact. That can all be done via pushing that task to your employees and say, actually, can you go in and make sure that it's all up to date? Can you put in your emergency contact details and fill in the fields in the system yourself? So again, you can start pushing tasks to your employees, so you're not having to do it. And also what we find as well is a lot of employees, when they're looking to book, for example, holidays, it delivers a better employee experience, but it also saves on admin as well, is they will typically do it the weekend when they're looking at booking a holiday. So they will put that request in, and especially if they can do it on the mobile device, they'll put that request in and it'll be in their own time, rather than in work time. And again, just reducing your costs, but also for an employee, it's a great user experience whereby they can look at a holiday, put in your request, and you know that whenever your manager gets around to viewing it, they'll be able to deal with it straight away. So you've not got to wait until you get into the office, go get your spreadsheet or your form and put it on the calendar and then get someone to approve it and send it to HR. It's just automated. It just gives that really good, seamless experience. The next tip that we've got is cut unnecessary spend, and this might seem a bit obvious, but with more businesses now having their staff where they can deployed working from home, there's going to be a lot of businesses now that are thinking, actually, do we need, could this become a permanent / semi-permanent thing, whereby we just have hot desks, and we have a range of hot desks, and we work it on a rota and allow people the flexibility of working from home. A lot of businesses have been able to operate, and in some cases operate even better than what they would in the office. But obviously, to do that, you need to think around, how do you make that work for your employees? Are your systems cloud-based? Can they access them? There's not much point in having your employees working from home, but all your systems are all on your servers back in the office, and nobody's able to access them. Can you manage your employees remotely? How do you performance manage employees when you're all working, or some working remote, some not? Can you streamline any processes? And as we mentioned before, elements where an employee needs to submit requests, can you streamline that to make it, again, on a cloud-based system, just make it much easier, much more straightforward. And then again, can you access analytics as well? So as people are working from home, as people are operating remotely, can you analyze what's happening in the business as well? And then also the last one is, are you doing everything you can as well to support employee well-being? So obviously, especially in this time, but if you then start looking at remote working, you need to ensure that you haven't got that touch point, making sure that you're doing everything that you can from an employee well-being point of view. And that one kind of leads me on to something that I'm going to talk about here, which is around EAP and employee benefits. But our fifth and final tip is around human resources savings. So there are going to be very tough and challenging decisions that businesses have to make as and when they return back to their office or back up for operation. And the first one we've got on there is if justified, can you look to reduce employee hours? So there may be times where you say, well, look, we can keep our staff and keep them employed, but we're just going to have to reduce your hours. It may be overtime's reduced, it may be their core hours reduced. One thing I would note is that obviously you'd have to have some amendment to their contract, and it's worth getting advice around how to do this in the best way before you go ahead and make any changes. Another one might be to ask senior staff if they would accept a temporary or permanent pay cut. Again, to look to reduce costs. Again, this comes with it needs to be agreed with your employees and the staff that are impacted. And again, advice should be sought before anything is done. But it's another way that you can look to reduce costs in your business. Rewards, and this is when it comes into the employee benefits. So a lot of businesses will offer, pay increases, bonuses, commission schemes. Could it be that you could review them and actually implement an employee benefits platform? So one that MorePay offers is an employee benefits platform where you can go in, you provide access to the employees or to the employees, and they get access to a range of discounts. So you get around 6,000 discounts, but you've also got a range of benefits. And obviously they're offered at a reduction in terms of price point if you were to go out and try and get that benefit direct off as an employee. So you've got stuff like health cash plan to work. You've got a range of benefits there that actually means for an employee that it could save you money because you've not had to put in a bonus scheme, for example, or a salary increase. So it saves you money there by offsetting it with the employee benefits. But then your employees actually are more better, or your employees are more financially better off because they save more money by using all these discounts and benefits that you've given them access to. Another statement you might look at is job sharing. So would it benefit by for a couple of employees to job share? And then another one is develop and retain staff. So obviously recruitment costs are very expensive these days, taking everything into account. And obviously you've got to get someone into a business trained and up and running to full capacity. Could you look to develop employees through e-learning or through online training courses rather than having to bring new talent in? But it may also look to help retain those staff that were thinking, actually, I might want a change. It maybe you can move the roles around. So it may be beneficial to just keep that talent and develop it in-house. And then obviously, if the unfortunate happens, you do have to make redundancies. It probably doesn't fall in the same bracket as savings, but it may be that businesses do have to make redundancies. And again, as per the top two, as you go to do this, I would say if you can just get the advice wherever you've got your HR or your employment law advice, take that advice because it may save you long term in the future in terms of tribunals or anything like that. And then you'll see on the right hand side, there's just some of the things that we can support you with that I mentioned. With you can out, we do have an advice line. We can help you with your documentation. We do have occupational referral schemes, ensure the advice. We've got HR consultants, and then also lastly, we do have an EAP program as well. So I mentioned before, making sure that your employees' well-being is looked after. We do offer an employee assistance program that allows you to offer it to your employees. They can pick up the phone and speak to a trained counsellor on a variety of things, and it could be positive, it could be negative, but it may be that support that your employees need, especially this time, but also just moving forward. It's good to ensure that, and again, it helps with retaining your staff if you're doing everything you can to support your employees. So in terms of a conclusion, because I know that we're getting to we've just gone over the half an hour mark now. I think our conclusion is just make sure that your business is running as smoothly as it can. Do an audit, because the worst that can happen is you find out, actually, yeah, I am running efficiently. I don't need to do anything different. Bear in mind that some of the stuff that we have talked about today is there's a bit of a mixture between short-term and medium to long-term benefits. So it may be that you can switch something on and you get a short-term quick, oh, that's a quick benefit. It may be something that you have to think long-term about and think, actually, I'm going to get the benefit of this in a few months or 6 months, a year. But think about, actually, yeah, it is going to do that. It is worth investing now. When you're looking at new technology, just make sure that you can get them all connected, get the best value, do a plan of how and what information you need to get transferred on a monthly, weekly, whatever basis, daily basis. Make sure that whatever systems you have, that you can integrate them and you can get that that connection going, and you don't have to duplicate any information. And then think outside the box when it comes to cost savings, and make sure you're taking everything into account, from somebody sat there inputting data, processing something, versus outsourcing it or outsourcing elements of it. Just make sure that you're comparing apples with apples as such. And if you do make changes to any contracts, or if you are looking at making any drastic changes, just make sure you take advice and get guidance before you do. So with that, I'm going to go, because I've seen we've had just a couple of questions come through. So anybody that has got any questions now, if you put it in that questions box, I'll hopefully be able to answer them now. So the first question we've got is the employee benefits you offer a separate system. So the employee benefits is an integrated system. So if you take on board our employee benefits with our payroll, as employees are going in and they select benefits, they pick, a health cash plan, and that's going to cost them X amount each month. The system will calculate it all for you. You don't have to do anything as a payroll. All you do as a payroll admin is accept their request to have that benefit, because you can decline it. You accept it, the calculation, the system will calculate it all for you. So you don't have to do any work. Once they've accepted it, it'll come out their wage and it'll be detailed on their pay slip as an employee. So in effect, you're just paying for access to that system. You go in and select all the benefits, and they're pre-selected. We've gone and found all the providers, worked out with them. You don't have to do any of that. So it's kind of like bringing employee benefits to the SMB market. Another question we've got is, how does your advice line work? So anybody looking at outsourcing their HR, or they want just a second opinion around employment law, HR, it's a 24/7 advice line. You pick up the phone, you speak to a fully qualified advisor. They will give you best practice advice in terms of what you should do. They can also give you commercial advice if you want to do something a bit quicker. Obviously, best practice advice, if you've taken insurance as well, is insured. So should it go to a tribunal, all the costs and potential awards are covered there as well. So your advice line, they will guide you through. They'll send you some templates. You work through that advice, and whatever the topic is that you're talking around, they'll ensure that you get through it at the end and support you all the way through that. that's all we only had a couple of questions in today. So unless anyone's got any other questions to ask, we're 5 minutes kind of over. So I'm going to end the webinar now. If you do want any more information, you want any further guidance, whether it be around the products that we offer, or you want to access that guide that I was mentioning before, if you go to our website at the top, if you go to the Knowledge Center, you'll see all our updates and all our collateral that we put in there. You'll be able to access it all there. So I'd like to thank you for joining the webinar today. If you do have any questions, I'm going to leave the questions box open for the next couple of minutes. If you put them in, if anybody wants any more information, put a question in there, and we'll certainly get it answered or get information over to you. So thank you and have a great day. Bye bye.